Hi, Sangeeta. So nice of you to be here. Thank you so much for coming. And I just wanted to start right off by letting you introduce yourself and also the inspiration behind starting Gotara.
So I quit last year. I quit Amazon about just before the pandemic because I felt the timing was right. This is the time when employers actually started putting their money where their mouth was. So I thought, okay, I can actually run a business, and it has actually been true. So that's a little story behind my career. And the inspiration behind Gotara, that was the second question that you asked. You understand the reason why I started. And we named Gotara. Tara in Sanskrit means a star.
Right.
And go reach for the star is the spirit behind Gotara. And we use the hashtag spiral up to say, don't point fingers at employers and policies and other things. Figure out what you can do to spiral up. And once you're there, start changing the rules.
Wow. I mean, what fantastic timing for you to start the company. You said it was just before the pandemic.
Yes.
Wow. Wow. No, I mean, that's such fantastic timing because I think, especially during the pandemic, at least in the beginning part of it, is when there were a lot of companies that realized that the women could be as productive as men. You know, they saw the similarity, which they otherwise probably didn't see or were not able to see before the pandemic. But since you mentioned about your own journey, right? I know that I had recently read about research where in India, for example, in the year 2016, they had done a survey where they had done a survey of STEM colleges, and the percentage of women to men was almost 50%, which was great, which was excellent to hear. But then they did a survey of women in the fields a few years later, and they found that there were only 24% of women working in the STEM fields.
Yep.
So how do what do you think we can do to make that number higher? Because if they are graduating from schools, if they're becoming engineers, whatever that they are doing in the STEM industry, what can we do to help the women stay in the industry and contribute?
Yeah. So Sangeeta, I'm glad you asked that question because this is the foundation of why Gotara exists today. Okay. 40% of the women leave the workforce. So we're doing a great job of graduating women out of college. So and companies are doing a great job recruiting them into the workforce. But something happens within 5 to 7 years where we get 40% exodus of the talent.
Right.
And what Gotara is doing right now is actually looking at the behaviors and identifying the root causes. And the root causes on the surface, they look like, well, the women are at that age, they want to have family. That's why they're taking time off. And as I interviewed after launching Gotara, a whole bunch of people I knew and did not know, what I found out was 95% of the women who left wanted to stay in the workforce, wanted the sense of belonging, wanted the financial independence, and wanted the intellectual stimulation. They were forced out of work, mostly because of the work environment, and in few cases by the home environment. And those are the root causes. And they're not the root causes of like a flexibility or benefits or compensation. They're about how they feel at work when they're working. Are they feeling valued? Are they feeling bullied? Do they have growth opportunities? Are they being dumped on at work just because they're women?
Right.
Things like that. Those are the things we address. And you can't believe all kinds of things that we are hearing from our members. Many of them are related to those root causes.
Wow. I don't know if you can share any of those, but maybe I can ask you to share some of your experience, some of the roadblocks that you had as a woman, and not just as a woman, but also a person of color, as an immigrant, as a person of color, as a woman. I'm sure, there were some things in your own journey that you can probably share.
Yeah. I'll share both.
Okay, that'd be useful.
I think I was lucky in some ways that I found a sponsor. I didn't even know what sponsor meant at the time, and he tapped me on the shoulder, and I spiraled up at GE, and so I feel very privileged about that. Not everybody gets lucky like that, but I'll also share, despite all of that, I did feel discrimination at points. And I clearly remember two situations, and this is still, I was a junior in my career and getting right at the cusp of senior level roles. There was one role that I really wanted, and I just couldn't get the interview. And I was just totally stumped and couldn't figure out why. And as I sat down with the senior HR leader, what he told me was that at this point, everybody at your level is performing well. That's why they are where they are. Makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. Now, the leader, who is the hiring manager, has to be comfortable with you. And I started thinking about, what does comfort mean? Yeah. He's white, I'm not. He's a male, I'm a female. I work, my husband works. He works, but his wife doesn't work. He has some interests that may be different than mine. How will I create the comfort? What do I do to create the comfort? And that was a signal to me that comfort is some sort of a discrimination, right? And another place where I felt this way, where a senior leader, when I was talking about my aspiration, it was an exploration for a job. It was not a specific job. He made a comment about, oh, most Indians are software engineers and you're not. I'm a material scientist. And then went into business leadership. And then the second thing he says, most of the Indians and Asians like to be individual contributors. You want to be a leader. And I was just totally taken aback by his observations and what he was telling me. And I wanted to ask him, I did ask him, is this an insult or it's a compliment? I can't figure it out. But that was, again, my signal to move on. Because somebody just doesn't get that. I don't know if it is worth fighting that battle.
That is true. That is true. It's funny. So comfort is like a euphemism for, but I think things are in some ways getting better, because I see a lot of my friends whose kids are going into very different, lines of education, where it's not necessarily just computer science or medicine, and parents are totally on board with it. So hopefully things are changing.
Yes, they are, for sure.
Right. So another question I did want to ask you is that now it seems that, people seem to be a lot on board with, women in leadership, people of color. But in a lot of companies, I noticed that there's, maybe one seat at the C-suite level where they will put in a woman sort of as a checkbox, because everybody wants to get on this whole D&I bandwagon, right? Are there studies or anything that where you can say, wait, but don't do it as a checkbox, because having women and having diverse thought is actually affecting your bottom line?
Yeah, so that's actually a good question, because I'm sure a lot of people have made that observation that, yeah, you have women at certain levels, but they don't really have any power. They are individual contributors, or they don't have a big job. So they have a small organization, but all the power and the budget belongs to other organizations. And what I feel is that maybe you start there. If you don't have a pipeline of senior leaders where you're pulling in junior women to at least bring them to visibility to senior leadership, that's a great first step. But the second step is these women leaders cannot make a difference if they don't have a blast radius. If the blast radius is just them or 2 other people or 10 other people, then that's the difference they're going to make. If you want to make a difference for your whole company, give them an organization that has thousands of people, and you'll see a difference in thousands, not in onesies and twosies, but in thousands.
That's great. So I'm sure that's one of the things a company can do. Anything else that you think that companies can do just to bring that diverse thought leadership to them?
And I think we talk about voice at the table a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that literally. If once you decide that you're going to have a woman at the table, whether they're junior women, senior women, mid-level, whatever you've decided, make sure they have the voice at the table. Don't have them for a ceremonial position. Make sure you hear their viewpoint and you let your team hear their viewpoint, and don't ignore them.
Yeah. And I feel the more that they realize that this actually is helping their bottom line, the more they will be, encouraged to do that. So
and we have a lot of data to prove how having diversity at senior leadership levels actually improves innovation, improves client engagement, improves the bottom line and the top line.
Oh, we do. That's great. Yes. That's wonderful to know. I think the more this data gets out, the more people will have on board with that.
Yep.
So since we are all also constantly evolving, can you share maybe some of the rules that you have broken to get to where you are?
So when I think about breaking rules, and some people have actually told me that I've broken rules, I actually correct them and tell them, no, I think we're just changing rules. Rules are made to be changed. And it's a constant evolution. Whether you take our Constitution in the US or you take our Congress or companies, you'll constantly see evolution of vision, mission, leadership principles, regulations. And they change because the environment changes. And as more and more women are in the workforce in every kind of a job, the rules need to change. And so a few times in my career, once I realized that I have gotten to a point where I have the power, I can go do it, I don't need anybody's permission, I tried them and it worked. I'll give you 2 examples. One time I got to this organization, and it was a technical organization. So I had about 17 reports globally reporting into me. All of them were men. And I just assumed that there aren't any women. That's why really at the senior level. So that's why I don't have any direct reports. So I asked my HR to go do this analysis for me. Let me know how many women I have in my organization. And I was thinking about maybe 10%, 5% or something like that. And she came back with a number of 50%. I said, holy smokes, where are And I asked her to literally identify 3 senior top talent women. And I'm going to interview them. And I interviewed them. I decided to put them in senior roles, and they reported to me directly. So they got at least 1 promotion, if not 2.
Just like that. Excellent.
Just like that. And we said, this is an experiment. We're going to see if this works or not.
Right.
And if it didn't work, at least we tried.
Yeah.
And a year later, these 3 women were my top 5 talent. They beat out 14 other men.
Wow.
And so clearly they were capable leaders, and they were not brought into the roles that they could have done. And my question to them was at a later stage, did you not raise your hands, or you raised your hand and nobody noticed or nobody cared? And their answer was both. And so we need to fundamentally change that. We need to take the bull by the horn and make some changes like that. Another one change that is very actually different than women or men. We had a center of excellence in Eastern Europe. And we would hire some great talent and we would lose them within a year. So they would get the stamp of a big company and then they would go work in some other company because their compensation was much higher. And I was doing a yearly HR review, and this was one thing that I saw, going line item by line item. And I said, okay, we got to make a change. And in this case, the change was that we needed to actually increase their compensation by 100%. In order for them to keep, for them to be retained in the company. And we did that. So the cost of the company was not a hell of a whole lot, but we reduced our attrition tremendously. What I want to say to the audience is one has to take the risk. And many times this risk is worth it.
You are definitely a risk taker. And I think a lot more people should do that, because unless you do it, you're never going to know. So what would you say to women that are coming up? I know you have a daughter, right? So girls that are growing up in this environment, they do see everything around. They do see that there are more women in leadership positions, but there's still, there's so much that they can learn from folks like you, right? So what would you say to them, how to navigate themselves so that they can sort of maybe avoid some of the roadblocks that you and I went through?
Yeah. So I would say three things. I would say be bold. Many times what I have heard as we have advised on Gotara, what I'm observing is sometimes they're doing absolutely the right thing, but they're not sure. They're saying, is this too much? My previous leader didn't do this and I'm doing it. Is this the right thing to do? The reason you are in that leadership role or in the big position is because you're good and you're going to do things differently. So be bold. Be bold. Yes, triangulate it, bounce off ideas with others, but don't question yourself.
Right.
Second one is be smart. This is when you look around and you'd want to fix everything and improve everything around you. Prioritize one thing or two things. Focus on one or two things to get things done. The other one is be empathetic, meaning that you would want to challenge a lot of things because, as we just talked about, rules are made to be changed. And right. You want to change every rule that you see in front of you. And that may not be the best way to approach it. Instead of challenging a rule, I would say always ask questions why. Understand from their perspective why it is the way it is. And then in many cases, you'll bring them to actually change the rule. You don't even have to change the rule. They'll realize for themselves that, oh, this needs to be changed. So those are the three things that I would say for you, how you can spiral up and start changing the rules.
That's great. That's great. I love it. I love it. I love all 3 points. One of the things I love about you is how confident you are. You are such a risk taker. You are a go-getter. You're everything that one should look for in a leader. Okay. And you're a woman. So what happens, I have seen very often, is that when you find women like yourself, you will hear murmurs of people saying, yeah, she's just, she's not at all approachable. I don't know. I mean, she's just so full of herself, I don't know if you have heard things like that. What is your experience? Have you heard this? Because if this was to be a man, people would be like, oh, wow, he's got such a personality. He's so confident, right? But it seems the judgment on women is very different.
Yeah. So I think you may be right in some aspect. I think at least the feedback I get is I may be too approachable.
Okay.
In fact, my leaders, men leaders who work for me would say anyone can come and set up time with you. why do you take all these meetings? And so he actually indicated to me I was too approachable.
Okay.
Do agree with you that you can have two very good leaders. One will be called assertive, and the other one will be called aggressive.
Right.
Woman who will be called the aggressive, and the guy will be assertive and a big thinker and all that. And woman needs to earn trust, and she's too aggressive and stuff. And that, as employers, as leaders, as society, we got to watch ourselves, because we do it too. Women do it too.
Absolutely.
We have this unconscious bias that when we are passing judgments like this, and sometimes those judgments don't matter, but when they matter in promotions and things like that, where you take pretty much same exact scenario of accomplishment and you call one think big and the other one earn trust, not a good idea.
Right.
So this is something we constantly have to consciously look for in order for us to fix.
Right. Absolutely. And I know we are really coming towards the end. So there were a couple of questions I know needed to talk to you about. I have a personal question that I wanted to ask you. You have a daughter, and we just talked about, what you would say to young women. I actually have two boys. So what would you say to young men entering the workplace?
Yeah. So good, very good question. They have an equal part in all of this. They benefit from doing the right thing. So one thing, Sangeeta, for you, I'll say being a role model at home for them. I bet your son already has respect for not only you, but also the other women who work, because he has grown up seeing you as a working mom. So having a role model at home definitely helps. So know that you've already done some good. As you'll observe in the future of work, EQ is going to become very, very important. So the guys who have the EQ are going to succeed much better than the guys who don't. And more women would want to work for them, more men would want to work for them. And so teach them things that seem feminine, that somehow men don't do. Teach them how to cook. Teach them to babysit. I don't know, some of these things, and he'll never have problem finding a date. I can tell you that.
No, this is great. Actually, this is great. So, last question for you. We all have, busy households. We are balancing work, we are balancing life. And a lot of the people who are listening to this, we have quite a few of our employees who are women who are in our India team. So that is a whole other aspect, right? Because family life is something that you're balancing, and it is tough. It's not just the biases at work. There are biases at home too. Mm-hmm. Anything that you would have to say to these women that would be helpful?
Yeah. So I would say Gotara is a global platform, and the kinds of issues we see are actually from women are very consistent across, whether it's from India or from Bulgaria or from US, kind of similar. And obviously there are cultural nuances to each one of them.
Right.
But my one request to you is when you interview men, you ask them the same question. That creates an equal level playing field. But what I would say is women should leverage data just like they leverage data at work to share with their spouse, their partner, and their family to say how the work should be divided at home, for them not to take the whole lot of work that they are doing. Let's put it on a piece of Excel sheet. Let's figure out who's doing what. And the other thing is outsource. Even if it costs you as much as your whole compensation, it is really worth it, because you are putting in foundation of your career. you may be making less right now, but you will make more. And if you don't outsource and you say, well, that's about the same amount of money as my babysitter or whoever, that equation may be okay today, but in the future, it'll not be okay because you'll be making a lot more than what you're making today. So outsourcing is the one thing that I had wished I had done sooner and more of. Looking back, I would do it more.
That is just fantastic. I know we have run out of time, so I'm just going to say thank you very much, Sangeeta. It was very helpful. Love talking to you, and I hope to do this again sometime in a little bit of time. As I had mentioned to you before, I could talk to you for hours, and every bit is going to be so exciting and helpful. So thank you. Appreciate it. Have wonderful holidays, and Happy New Year if I don't talk to you soon.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I really enjoyed talking to another engineer who has gone into sales, which is awesome. By the way, I am the Chief Revenue Officer right now for my company because I don't have a salesperson, so you and I are probably in the same boat. But thank you, and happy holidays and Happy New Year to you too.